He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
I recently had somebody in studio who said something I thought was very clever at first. It took me a minute to really get my mind around it. Here's what she said. She said, we have to learn to teach them the way they learn. We have to learn to teach them the way they learn. I can't tell you how many leaders that I've run into who feel like, maybe you've heard the old phrase, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. There are a whole lot of people who believe their leadership, their style, their personality, their character traits, their own personal quirks define leadership and the scope of what leadership should be, to such a degree that they use exactly the same methods, communication styles, learning patterns, and training styles with everyone that they lead. I don't think that's a great, effective way to lead, and that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And I have been around so many different leaders that they kind of feel like this is the way we're going to do it and everybody's going to fall in line with that. In fact, while I was in the Air Force, I was made dorm chief on day 9. My first official leadership role. I mean, I'd been in supervisory roles while the part-time jobs that I had before I joined the Air Force. But once I got into the Air Force, day 9 of basic training was my first leadership role. And then when I got to my first duty assignment, training assignment, I was put on what they call the ropes team, where we had to wear a rope because we were considered leaders of our dorm, leaders of our unit, leaders of our group. And I had an argument with one of the guys who said, you know, you don't have to have leadership skills, you just have to follow orders. And he was a staff sergeant, 5 ranks above where I was as a brand new airman. And that conversation didn't go well. When we were done, though, we couldn't see eye to eye, and I simply surrendered my rope, and I said, if that's what leadership is, I'm not interested. It took me another 4 or 5 years studying leadership under people like John Maxwell. It wasn't under the Air Force leadership development, and it wasn't under the comply or die kind of leadership. It wasn't the people who wanted to beat their ideas into your head who taught me leadership. It was people who've taken the time to research genuine leadership. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some phenomenal leaders in the military ranks of all branches, of all levels. There are people that I still am in contact with today. Dr. Mark Thomas is one of those. He and I were enlisted. He was an E4, E5 when I was an E2, and we kind of worked our way up. We spent a couple of years together in England, became pretty good buddies, spent a whole lot of time working together on the fire trucks. He has gone on after retiring from the Air Force to get his PhD in leadership. His concepts of leadership, even when we were working together on the base, were a lot more diverse than what you would expect from military command. There's a lot of military command that just says, you're going to do it like this. I don't care if it's right or wrong. It's my way or the highway. You'll do what I told you to do. And we find when we're not in that level of military command, when you're out in the daily world and you're dealing with people on a retail basis, et cetera, it doesn't work so well that way. If you're trying to get your point across, you're trying to communicate with somebody, you're asking them to comply with an idea that you have, to take an action that you want them to behave in a certain way, you're going to have to find ways to communicate with them the way they want to be communicated with. Now, that's hard for some old school leaders. Guys and gals that are older than I am, they're used to being able to just say, do it because I said so. My mom used to say, because I said so. It's not about right or wrong. It's not about whether you think it's a good idea or not. It's because I said so, and there's no discussing or debating that. Many leaders still hold that kind of perspective when it comes to leadership. On the opposite end of that spectrum, we have those who feel like, if I'm brand new to the game, brand new to the company, brand new to the industry, know nothing about the product or the service, I still should have a say in how it happens and who gets paid how much and when the product goes out and how much my pay is and how much time off I have and all of these things. There are a whole lot of people who feel like, although they are brand new and they know nothing, they have no experience, they have no education per se in this specific thing, but they have an opinion and they have a will that because those two things exist, the world should back up, come to a stop, and follow their instructions. That also is a disaster recipe waiting to be cooked up. But somewhere there's got to be a middle. So when I had a guest in the studio whose entire business is built around finding employment for people with special abilities. They may be autistic, they may be on the spectrum somewhere, they may be dealing with other incapacitations, maybe it's blindness, maybe it's deafness, maybe it's limited mobility. Her role, her career is developed around finding these people with unique talents, unique abilities, and unique limitations, and partnering them with a company that says, yeah, we've got space for somebody that has those kinds of limitations but can still perform the job functions that we need done. And she spends all of her time building these negotiations between the employment agencies and the employee and the company itself. And when she said to me, we've got to learn to teach them the way that they learn, a light bulb went off in my head. And I thought, in the world of leadership, we have kind of the same thing. And there are some people that verbal cues alone are enough. Hey, don't do that. That's enough. I've raised toddlers. All of my children are grown now, but I have a fistful, almost a dozen, little ones that run around my life on a regular basis, starting at 5 or 6 months old and all the way up to 16. And for many, just in that little group of diversity, for many of them, if I say, don't do that, that's the end of the conversation and everything changes. For others, what I get is a stare down, and they're going to do it just to see what happens. They're going to test the limits. They want to push the boundaries. They want to know where this envelope of grace ends. That's not just a grandchildren thing. That's a human nature thing. It's a character thing. You've heard me say before, we've got to understand the love language of those people that we lead because we need to learn how to communicate to them when we are appreciating them, when we are encouraging them, when we're instilling hope in them. And in the same way, correction, discipline, behavior modification, all of those are different. One of the young ladies that's attached to one of my young men right now, I don't know if she'll be a future daughter-in-law or not, but she is receiving her training right now, working on her certification to become a registered behavioral therapist. Meaning she's the person who sits in the room with someone who's really hard for anybody else to handle and walks through the processes on a daily basis to help these people learn how to respond to society in a normal way. Behavioral therapy. Okay, if we realize that our society is a mix of people that some you can correct by saying, I wouldn't do that. And that's really the end of the discussion. They're going to move in another direction. They're going to try a new idea. They're going to listen to the instructions that you gave them with a verbal cue that simple. And others, you may have to straight up threaten to fire them or threaten some other kind of timeout, physical punishment, whatever it's going to be, before you're going to get compliance. And then there are going to be others. I have one that just will not comply if you tell them to. Whatever you tell them to do, they're going exactly the opposite direction until destruction comes because you told them to. But if you can lead them early on by pointing them in the right direction and let them discover it's all their idea anyway, tends to have a better outcome. We forget that even as people grow older, these personalities, these character traits, they don't vanish, they don't disappear, they don't go away. They're still the same person. They still have the same characters. They still have the same traits. They still have the same responses to others. And they may be 25, 35, 45 years old, and I wouldn't do it like that. Is enough to make them go, is there a better way? And if so, what is it? And it may be that at 25, 35, 45 years old, you go, if you do that, you are going to lose your job. And they're like, I'll go get another job. And they really don't care. Your threats don't mean anything to them. They're going to push back anyway. I love the way John Maxwell says it. Of course, I've been using this little book here, the Mentoring 101. He says, and this is on page 98, he says, lead everyone differently. One of the mistakes rookie leaders often make is that they try to lead everyone the same way, kind of like my experience with the military people. He says everyone doesn't respond to the same kind of leadership. You should try to be consistent with everyone. You should treat everyone with kindness and respect, but don't expect to use the same strategies and methods with everyone. You have to figure out what leadership buttons to push with each individual person on your team. One person will respond well to being challenged. Another will want to be nurtured. Challenged or nurtured? Which one helps your team to move in the right direction? Which one is the right way to coach, to lead, to mentor, to encourage your team? I want you to think of it like this. When you look across the group of people that you lead, the ones that you're responsible for, do you see a homogenized group of it's all 2% milk? It's all chocolate milk. It's all strawberry milk. Everybody looks exactly the same to you. If that's the case, then maybe you need to change your view a little bit. Maybe, like when you go to the milk aisle now, you see oat milk and soy milk and coconut milk and almond milk. Those things are hard to milk. And goat milk and cow's milk. And cow's milk comes in 14 different flavors and different percentages. I don't know where you find a 2% cow, but whatever. But maybe you should look at it more like when you go to the pizza buffet and they've got all the various kinds of pizza, and they also have all the various elements of building your own salad. So you can start with just regular iceberg lettuce, or you can start with the spinach, or you can start with the, what is that other green leafy thing, kale? You can build a salad around that. However you want to build your salad, you can add the ingredients to it. And oftentimes, leading is more like that. It's more a matter of saying, okay, well, if I were building this salad for my wife, leave off the peppers. No peppers of any sort. She doesn't do peppers at all. Not green peppers, not red peppers, not yellow peppers, not jalapeno peppers, not serrano peppers. No peppers. Leave the peppers off. Most of the time, if I put black pepper in the gravy, she fusses about that. So no peppers. But I know that about my wife. I know that spicy things are not going to be good in that relationship. Have you gone to that detail as a leader? Have you asked yourself the question, what are the elements of communication style? What are the elements of relationship building? As I'm building my leadership relationship with this one individual on my team, what have I done diligently to observe their needs, their wants, their desires? Do they want the challenge or do they want the nurture? Do I need to get behind them and push, or do I need to stand in front of them and draw them to me? All right. Every child and grandchild that I have encountered in my life, every person that I've worked with is just a little bit different. I personally love a thin crust pizza with pepperoni, pineapple, and jalapeno. I don't know why, it's just one of my favorite flavor combinations. My wife doesn't do jalapenos, and pepperoni sometimes is even too spicy for her. So when we order the pizza together, we can do pepperoni or pineapple on the whole thing, pepperoni on one half, Canadian bacon on the other, and on the half with pepperoni, throw in some jalapeno, and we've got a great pizza for the two of us. The minute you add one of our kids to the mix, one doesn't do pepperoni at all, and he doesn't like Canadian bacon because he hates everything bacon, so he wants some other kind of meat on there. He does like the pepperoni and pineapple, but not the jalapeno, and now all of a sudden you've got a different kind of pizza, hence the pizza buffet. Pick your own, and if you have to, tell them to make one for you. Leadership needs to be that diverse. Every background, every education, every home upbringing, every preconceived notion and conscious bias and even unconscious biases that we have experienced in the course of our life will change the way we interact as leaders and with leaders. If we're not willing to say as a leader, I'm going to have to modify my approach, my boundaries, my expectations, my limitations, my goals. I'm going to have to modify those a little bit for each of the different people on my team. I'm going to have to back up a minute and go, okay, if I apply rules A, B, and C to everyone, will I get the same outcome? Chances are probably no. You're going to have to modify just a little bit of a tweak from one side to the other in order to get the outcome and the results that you want. If you'll simply acknowledge that up front, if you'll take the time to do your homework, to get to know your team, don't try to force every square peg into a round hole. Some of them are going to be triangular or octagonal. And if you're not willing to admit that up front and look at your team like a pizza buffet and then ask what's really going to motivate them, what's going to drive the best behavior in them, then you're going to lead like every problem you have is a nail because all you know how to do is hammer. Take the time to be a little more diverse in your thinking. Do a little bit of homework on cultural backgrounds and understandings. Now, as you lead a larger organization, that's going to be harder to do. It's hard to do that with 50 people. It's harder to do that with 100 people. It's really nearly impossible to do that with 1,000 people. But that's the reason most people will tell you leadership as a delegated practice, usually a good leader can lead 6, maybe 10 people. And once they have more than 6 to 10 people in it, you need to multiply your leadership and have more than one person leading those 10. And maybe now you have 2 leaders with 5 each. And as that continues to grow, you're going to grow all the way up. Now, if you apply that rule and you also apply the rule that Dawson says, you've also got to realize that for everybody you add to your team, they should be bringing $250,000 to the bottom line. And if they're not, then you're growing your team faster than you're growing your revenue, and you've missed something in the formula. You're really going to have to spend some time working on that. You're going to have to spend some time asking yourself, why do I have so many people on my team and so little performance? That's a different set of questions, but it may still come back to the same thing. As a leader, you got one way of doing things, one way of leading people, one way of setting expectations, one way of defining goals. And you don't have one person responding to all that. You've got a smorgasbord. And you're going to have to take the time to figure out, how do I lead and motivate each one of them individually? At least until you have enough to delegate. And guess what you have to be training your leaders to do that you delegate to? The same thing. In fact, there should be a handoff. As you step up, as you elevate to the next level and you bring in another leader, there should be a handoff, like a playbook, to say, here's what I know about each of these individuals. Here's how my style integrated with them. Here's what the expectations were. If you haven't read the 6 Levels of Genius yet, as a leader, I challenge you to get out there and read that as soon as you can. There's some really great insight into the different styles, personalities, characters, and even job assignments within that book that'll really help you as a leader to diversify the way you lead individuals and not try to lead everyone exactly the same. Take the time to get to know your people. Ask yourself, is this a pizza buffet where I can pick and choose what I want? Or is this more like a salad bar where I need to build my interaction and my relationship with each person based on who they are, what they like, and what they need? If you'll take time to do that, you'll elevate your level of leadership and your level of influence in a really short period of time. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.